Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Graphic Organizers for Dysgraphia and Writing Issues. My name is Andrew Lee, and I'm part of the Understood team. Really happy to have with us here today Jenn Osen-Foss. She's an instructional coach and an Understood expert for this webinar. Hi, Jenn.
Hi.
Jenn, could you give our audience a little bit of information about your background before you start the webinar?
Yeah, sure. I'm currently an instructional coach here at Clear Creek Amana High School in Tiffin, Iowa. Previously, I have over 8 years of experience teaching in special education and social studies, 7 of which I taught at various schools in Washington, D.C., and most recently at the Kingsbury Center, which is the oldest institution in D.C. for students with learning disabilities. So this is going to be my second year as an instructional coach. And what an instructional coach does is they provide individualized professional development to teachers to help with differentiation, individualized learning plans for students, collaboration, and with technology.
That's awesome. Really excited to hear what you have to share about graphic organizers. So I'm going to hand it back to you to get the presentation going.
Okay. So graphic organizers are a really useful tool. And so one of the things that people might be wondering is, what are graphic organizers? So they're actually pretty simple. Graphic organizers are specifically for organization. They help organize notes, thoughts, steps, ideas. And in this case, for the 5 graphic organizers that we'll be going through today, they're for writing. And so this will help a student visualize in writing an essay or writing a paragraph or writing any form of other work, and it'll help them keep their thoughts organized and help them with their executive functioning. So everyone can benefit from a graphic organizer. It's commonly used in schools from grade K through 12. But specifically, graphic organizers can help students with learning disabilities, dysgraphia, ADHD, or executive functioning issues. So what you need to keep in mind is that graphic organizers are a tool, they're not a cure. And so what you need to do is you need to find the tool that fits you the best. And so every graphic organizer is different, and they aren't necessarily going to fit everything, but they also are going to have multiple purposes as well. So a good graphic organizer should help the child identify a main idea or a topic. There should be a space there. There should be a space for them to find their supporting details. And then there should also be an ability in this graphic organizer for you to make your details shorter or more concise and easy to read. So you're going to find, if you do a Google search, that graphic organizers are going to look very similar, but they're all going to have different purposes. Now, if I were to look on Google or look on a website, and I would not try to spend too much time trying to figure out the graphic organizer that I'm looking at. If there are no directions, if you can't figure out what the purpose is, then move on or make your own. We've made instructions and put guidance on all the graphic organizers that we're talking about today, and we've provided examples of what a filled-out graphic organizer would look like. So the types of graphic organizers that we're going to talk about today are going to focus on 5 different kinds of writing. These 5 different kinds of writing graphic organizers are all appropriate for grade school all the way up through high school. So some you might not find in high school as commonly, but you're going to still encounter most of these. And so the first one is going to be our sequence chart. Do you want to play the video?
This kind of graphic organizer is called a sequence chart. With a sequence chart, you're going to be using one of these in order to do something that's linear or has one direction, such as a timeline, or a math problem, a recipe process, or in this case, how to make a bird feeder out of a paper towel roll. As you can see, there's the first through last step, and then you fill it in. And so you can have your child, as they're trying to figure out a multi-step process, write down steps in the sequence chart and figure out how the process works. And then that'll help them with their writing or with their action on what they do. And so for your first step on this, you would want to get your materials. And then let's say that you would have an adult would poke holes at the top. And as you can see, this is an @ sign. Whenever you're doing a graphic organizer, you can use symbols, you can shorten words, you can use chunks of sentences or fragments rather than having to write out a full sentence. As long as the reader understands it, and that can be the person who's writing it or anybody else that they give it to read. So whenever you're filling these out, you continue to fill it out. It should be one step for each step. And then at the end, you would have your last step. So if you have your last step right here, it's okay if you have empty steps. That's fine. You just want to make sure that you notify that this is indeed the last step.
Wow, that was a great explanation, Jen. For our audience out there, if you want to make sure that you can see that graphic organizer, what you can do is press full screen on that video so you can really get in there and see how Jen is filling that out. Now, Jen, that graphic organizer video that you just did, that particular organizer, like all the ones that we're going to be talking about, are available on Understood, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So also for our audience, if you want to see that particular one that Jen is working on, you can go to the link that we're going to paste in the chat bar just so you can follow along. So I'll just hand it back over to Jen to walk through our next view.
So just a couple more points on the sequence chart graphic organizer and the other graphic organizers that you'll see. You're going to notice that at the top right there is a place for teachers or educators to have students place their name, date, class, or course. It's also going to have a nice little one-sentence introduction at the top as well. So as for a sequence chart, you can also use this for laying out multi-step math problems. You can use this for recipes, for recalling and arranging events within social studies, or if you're trying to tell a story. So this is a very linear graphic organizer. It goes from beginning to end in order. It's not going to be good for anything that has a little bit of a winding path. Our next graphic organizer is the persuasion map. If you want to put the video.
This is an example of a persuasion map. And for a persuasion map, it's to persuade somebody to come around to an argument that you are making. And so when you want to persuade somebody, you need to provide a reason, and you need to provide supporting details for that reason. You can't just give a reason without backing it up. And so this is designed so that you would have 3 reasons plus 2 supporting details for each of those 3 reasons. Sometimes whenever somebody is filling out a graphic organizer chart like this, the boxes might be difficult for them to fill out because it might be small. And so you can literally take a ruler as a teacher or a parent or even as a student, and you can go ahead and draw your lines going across. And in that way, whenever you start going through and drawing lines, you know exactly how big to write. And it'll help students with dysgraphia that maybe write up and down and have letter spacing and letter height issues be able to moderate how they're writing, and it'll give them guidance. You can do this also within the PDF form and then print them out with lines for the students or for your children if you're going to fill this out. And so if you look at this, you can see that your topic right here is that Muggle-born children should be allowed to attend Hogwarts. And they provide a reason right here, that very talented Muggles attended Hogwarts, such as, here's your 2 details, Hermione and Harry Potter's mom.
So another thing to think about with the persuasion map is that they're not just great for developing a persuasive essay, but also for speech writing, if you're going to submit a letter to the editor in a newspaper, or if you're even going to create an editorial in a student newspaper or in your local newspaper. The next graphic organizer is a spider map.
This is an example of what's called a spider map, and sometimes they're also called mind maps or they are called webs. But the purpose of is that you have a main idea that you write in the center circle, and then you have details that come off of that main idea. This is excellent for learning how to do note-taking, doing researching, and providing different abilities on being able to pull information out of text, such as in what's called a close read. So for this, if you have your main idea that women had to work hard to gain the right to vote, you're going to provide details. So for example, you could provide a detail such as activists went to jail. And that's a very, very important detail to include. But let's say that you want to include maybe some actual instances. On a spider map, if you want, you can always draw off some more boxes or circles. Now, what I always recommended as an accommodation for my students is if they're going to draw off, I recommended color coding. So this is called level 1. And level 1 is the boxes closest to the main idea. And those would be purple. And then level 2 would be the supporting details off of the first detail. And those would be a different color. And so I would oftentimes have students identify and color code their supporting details or their levels of details before they went and did their note-taking. And it helped them with their research very, very well.
So spider maps are really, really common. You're going to see these. They're going to be called mind mapping, star maps, or webbing. It's a great visual tool. It can be used from lower grades all the way up through high school. Now, I've used this extensively as a social studies teacher, and I worked with kids that once they figured out how to use this kind of a graphic organizer, they started translating this into other forms of writing, such as daily journaling in English class. So in the realm of note-taking, it really has those multiple supports. It forces kids to figure out how to be concise and to only write the most important information down. And it teaches kids how to break down an informational text into various levels and how to find the thesis statement and then the supporting facts. I've used this as a visual outline, and so it really helps kids who don't think linearly or in an outline form. And this is great for research papers as well, because if you're going old school and you're writing notes on note cards, you can kind of lay out your note cards in a way that it would look like a spider map out on your table or on the floor. So the next graphic organizer we're going to talk about is the T-table.
This is called a pros and cons T-table. So a T-table is hence the shape with the T in the middle. And on one side you have the pros, and on the other side you have the cons. Notice up here you have your fill-in space that you can go ahead and fill in your name, date, class, and teacher if you want. There's always instructions available on a really good graphic organizer, and the topic should be up here. So for pros, our question is, should the NCAA allow athletes to be paid? And for a pro, you could write down that it would help athletes support themselves. For the con, it would be hard for small schools to pay the same as big schools. Continuing on, athletes make the NCAA and their colleges a lot of money. So as you can see here, here's an and sign, and here is a money sign. You can of course use symbols and shortened words and what you know these shortened words mean. So, and as long as the reader knows what they're doing, that's fine as well. You also do not have to write sentences. As you see right here, there's some pluses and there's some minuses. And so that way, at each plus, that's where you would write, and at each minus. And so, of course, minus goes with cons, because that's not a good idea if you're arguing on the con side. And a plus goes with pros, because it is a good idea if you're arguing on the pro side.
So a T-table is not only great for research, but it also can be used if you're journaling or if you're arguing a personal decision. So this is also one of those graphic organizers that's really usable from kindergarten all the way up through high school and into college. Our next graphic organizer is the hamburger paragraph.
One of the nice features about the graphic organizers that are provided on the website is that you can download them. So you could click the download button, and then it would open up a PDF form. And the one nice thing about the PDFs is they provide an example or an exemplar, and then they have what's called fillable forms. So as a teacher, if I want to provide the topic sentence, I can. If I don't want to provide the topic sentence, students, if they can't write as easily as they can type, they can actually type right in the boxes for themselves. And so it's a nice feature for both parents, students, and teachers.
So for in this case, for a graphic organizer, hamburger paragraph graphic organizer is going to be probably your most acceptable within grade school levels and middle school levels. If you are a teacher or a parent and you're working on your high school level child, creating a better paragraph with a thesis statement, supporting facts and conclusion, you might want to change this up or adapt it. It might not be age appropriate for secondary level or high school level students. So let's talk about some accommodations and supports that you can use within the graphic organizers. I love graphic organizers as a special education teacher, but also as a regular ed teacher as well. And so I like to provide graphic organizers whenever possible, because you can provide many different accommodations and supports. So here's a list of possible accommodations, and as you can see, here's a screenshot of me drawing some lines on a graphic organizer to provide for a student that would have difficulty with estimating how big their letter should be. So oftentimes as a teacher, I'll just automatically provide this accommodation online before I print out my graphic organizer, but not everybody needs that, especially as students get older. Also, other accommodations include allowing phrases that you work through the graphic organizer out loud while writing. Let me clarify that. What that means is you would talk it out with the student step by step as they go through, and then either they write it out as you walk through it verbally, or you can scribe it if it's an appropriate accommodation for the student. And so they could tell you exactly what goes in that box, and then you write it down for them. You can use the electronic version to allow for typing for all 5 graphic organizers online. It also allows you that you can curate the research material. And what that means is you can pick out the research material that the students are going to look at. So you could write down on a graphic organizer, look at page 323 of your text, second paragraph, and that's where you're going to find the point that the teacher is wanting you to find within their graphic organizer assignment. Finally, you can highlight the information and have students practice rewording it. So oftentimes what I would do in order for students to figure out how to shorten out the main idea or the thesis statement is we would highlight it out, we'd figure it out, and then we would practice shortening it out into a fragment instead of a full sentence in order to fit it into the space provided. Some possible ways to support. Now, teacher talk, we call support scaffolding, because like scaffolding when you're building a building and it gives supports while people are building up with, especially like if you think of bricklaying. So scaffolding is as extra supports to help a student when they're getting an assignment. So one of the possible ways to support is to provide the topic or the main idea for the student, or you provide the way where they're going to find it. So a lot of textbooks will provide the main idea within the text at the beginning. If they're doing a research project, you can provide them the topic that they're going to research. So you can also narrow the amount of information like I just explained. So you could write down a hint of where to go or what terms to search or what websites to use if that's where the desired information is that you're trying to have your student research. Just because our kids are tech savvy nowadays doesn't mean that they actually know how to use tech. And so one of the things to help guide students on finding the right places to look is to help provide them by narrowing down the amount of stuff. If you look in a Google search, you're going to find millions and millions of different web pages that they can use, and you want to be able to help them figure out which web pages are reputable or good and which pages to stay away from. So you can also give a key term or a word to point the student in the right direction if they're having a hard time filling in graphic organizers. And then we can do something called modeling. Modeling is also called I do, we do, you do, or release. That is the teacher or the parent does it for the child watches. And then you give the same lesson with a different topic or the next problem, and you do it together, the parent and the child, or the teacher and the child. And then finally you release the student or the child, and they do it independently. And it might take a little while to have it independent, but at the same time, that's a great way to support kids in being able to do graphic organizers or to develop writing skills independently. So I have some key takeaways. So graphic organizers should always be easy to use. If they're not easy, then they're a waste of your time. This is to reduce the amount of work that you have. This is not to increase the amount of work. Graphic organizers should always provide a space to identify the topic or the main idea. They should always have supporting details or a place to put supporting details, and they should have the ability to make those details short and concise. And so finally, I would recommend looking for a graphic organizer that has instructions and has a description on how to use it at the top, and just like the ones that you'll find at understood.org with the pre-made graphic organizers. Any questions?
Thanks, Jen. That was a really great presentation. I feel like I really understand graphic organizers now, and it was really wonderful. For those of you in our audience who are watching, now's your chance to ask a question about graphic organizers, about writing issues. And if you do ask a question, just know that the more specific you can be about the grade of your child, the issue, and what they're struggling with specifically will make Jen's answers much more useful to you. But as we get those questions in, I'll be asking them. But one of my first questions actually on my side, Jen, is these graphic organizers on the site. These are ones that you have used in your own work, or that you helped develop with the team here at Understood?
Both, especially with the spider mapping. As a social studies teacher, I use that extensively for note-taking skills. And for the hamburger paragraph, we didn't use a hamburger paragraph, but we have worked at the high school level on how to write a proper paragraph with the supporting details and the thesis statement and the conclusion in the proper spots. So yes, on a regular basis, these organizers are used, and I have used them. It just like I said earlier, with certain ones, maybe keep in mind some age appropriateness. So
now, in some of our other experts, we have some technology experts, and I know that there are some software out there for creating sort of these mind maps. And I'm not asking you to sort of say which one is better or worse, but what do you think about paper versus like an app, or is it really like a sort of personal preference?
It really is a personal preference. For some students, they have a really hard time with writing and with size appropriateness, and with other students, it's really hard for them to be able to absorb the material that they're typing out. And so, because typing also can lead to some issues, there's some research that says that handwriting is better for memory retention than typing is. So for typing, that's why I recommend always putting things in your own words before you typing it in, because otherwise you're just transcribing like what a court reporter would do. They just type and they don't actually take in the material.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that came from a parent previously before the broadcast was about kind of figuring out which graphic organizer to use. And you mentioned that they're all for specific purposes, but is it just a matter of going through them and seeing, oh, this might help, or do you have any tips there for parents and kind of understanding how to use them?
So I can give some quick pointers. So if you look at like the hamburger paragraph or the sequence chart, you'll notice that the boxes are all in line. If you look at, so right here is the sequence chart, and then if you look at the hamburger paragraph, those boxes are on top of each other because there's a specific linear sequence. So if you know that what you're looking for is something that is first, second, third, fourth, fifth, look for something that goes in a line like that. If you're looking at something that's more flexible or a lot more complicated, you might want to go with something like a mind map, or a spider map. A persuasion the persuasion chart is also one that has multi-layers. It kind of webs out. So that one also doesn't necessarily go, first, second, third, fourth. You got your 1A, your 1B, your 2A, your 2B, if you're thinking in outline form. So just think that I would look for things that, do they line up or do they allow some flexibility for more complicated projects or writing assignments. So that's one thing that you can look at. And then also sometimes ask the teacher or look at your textbook. So if you're doing a note-taking assignment or if you're doing a writing assignment, a lot of modern day curriculum will provide an example of what type of graphic organizer you can draw in the first page of that section or of that unit. And so look at the beginning and see what the suggested graphic organizer is. And a lot of publishers provide that within the curriculum nowadays, so you can then use that as guidance and see if that would work for your child.
Now, let's say I had a child that was in sort of, in school, and I thought this might help, the graphic organizers. Are most teachers familiar with this? Will I have to sort of say, will most people, if I mention it to a teacher, will they know what I'm talking about? Should I provide the link? I mean, what do you think there from an educator's perspective?
Well, I would say that I've never met an educator that doesn't know what a graphic organizer is, and I've met a lot of educators. But if you find a really good one that helps your kid, share the location of it with the teacher, because teachers are totally overwhelmed with the amount of information that's given to them and the amount of information that's out there. And if you are able to figure out something that's specific, then share it with them. They'll really appreciate the lack of work that they have to do on their end, just looking for one that'll work for your child. Well,
that's what the great thing is. I think that putting together these graphic organizers has been really helpful. I mean, I actually want to use one with my son who sometimes has some issues with some of the writing assignments. So I think this has been really helpful. So thank you so much, Jen. Any last thoughts for our audience before we wrap things up?
Just if you have any questions, feel free to put in the comments at the bottom of the graphic organizer article, and I'm sure that an expert will be able to reply and help you out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jen, and thank you to our audience as well. Just a reminder to everyone out there, you can see this chat or this webinar and any of other recorded events at u.org/calendar. That's u.org/calendar. You can also see what's upcoming. So please go there, visit, and use this video as a reference when you're thinking about how to help your child. That's it for now, and have a great day.
All right, thank you.
Bye.